Welcome back to my series where I'm going through all of the challenges in my book, The C Sharp Player's Guide. Today we're going through the Getting Armed challenge, which is an expansion on the Fountain of Objects challenge. We've been doing the last several videos have been building on this. And just a reminder, you don't need to do all of these expansion challenges. You either do the base challenge and then two of these expansions, or you go get my code online for the base challenge and then do five of these. I for these videos, I'm just gonna do them all. We've already done a whole bunch of them. I think we actually only have these two left, so we're actually getting close to being done. So today we're doing this Getting Armed challenge, which gives us a chance to bring arrows into the game and to shoot any monsters that are in there. Uh, this obviously doesn't work if you haven't done the Maelstroms or Amaroks challenge. So we've done both of those in these videos already, so we'll be able to make that work pretty well. I don't think this is going to be too difficult of a challenge, but let's just see where it goes. So obviously the first thing here is, um, let's just talk through the challenge a little bit. So you got arrows. We start with I think 5 arrows. Does it say that? Yeah, 5 arrows, and you can't shoot when you're out of arrows. So we'll have to account for that, and then we'll have to display the number of arrows the player has when displaying the game status. So we'll have to add that in, and then also just adding in the ability for the player to, instead of saying move north, move south, move east, move west, to be able to say shoot east, shoot south, shoot west. And when they shoot, it goes into the room in that direction, and if there's a monster that's in there, it kills that monster, and that monster's out of the game. We can, for all practical purposes, it's removed. So we won't be able to sense it anymore, and it won't be able to affect the player. Of course, that consumes an arrow. I don't think this specifically says it. It maybe should. But anyway, so that's the idea. Let's go look at our design really quick over here and see if there's any cards we would make for this. So we don't need to update these maps this time. There's nothing to do for that. But let's come over here. So we do, I think we do expect that we're going to have another action time. So I'm going to duplicate this here, and so we have a move action, and let's just add in a shoot action, and then this will say um, kills a monster in the direction the player shot. So I think that'll just be one more action type. I think we will need to touch this player input, get an action from the player. This is going to have to account for that shoot action type. So, and somehow we have to know how many arrows the player has. So there's a lot of places that could go, but I don't think it belongs in any of these actions. I don't think it belongs in this player input. I don't think I think out of all these options, like it doesn't have anything to do with the map or these rooms. I think you could put it here, but for given what we've got, I think I would say this is probably a responsibility to put here. So knows how many arrows. Let's shorten this. Tracks arrow count. So I do expect that that other things like the shoot action will be able to decrease that by one, and be able to ask it how many arrows it has. Let's see. Is there anything else? Um, one thing. One thing is that we're going to have to somehow eliminate these from the game, and I don't know if I'm going to. So one of two things needs to happen. Either this guy has a list of so we call this non-player characters, but in the code we ended up calling it a monster. So I'm going to rename that here just for clarity. Player characters, monsters. Yeah. So these guys, one of two things is going to happen is we're going to have to either remove a dead monster from the list that this guy has of all the monsters, or these guys are going to have to be able to keep track of whether they're alive or not. Um, I'm not going to get into that here. I think we just need to account for that in code, and we'll talk about a couple of different options when we get there. But yeah, so like I said, I think that's covers the changes that we're going to be making at a high level. And so let's just go to the player class, not the player input class, but the player class. And this is going to have a int arrow count. And like I said, I think we can make this settable from the outside world. There's well, yeah, I think we have this settable. There is a like by just doing this, there is a danger that somebody could like that something else in the game could set the arrow count to negative 2000. Um so if we want to like the way this is set up, it wouldn't prevent that. If we wanted to prevent that, one thing we could do is we could make the setter private and then add in a separate method here that's like consume arrow, and then in here do something like arrow count minus minus. So now nobody has the ability to just set any value, but they can call consume arrow really as many times as they want. So you actually still could get this down to negative 2000. So what we could do is we could say if arrow count is greater than 0, let's do that. So this gives us the most protection in terms of ensuring that our arrow count doesn't get messed with by anyone else. The only way to affect the count is to call this consume arrow method. Now, is this better than the other version where we just had a public setter? I think you can make an argument that it is. Like I said, it gives us that extra layer of protection that nobody can just mess with it. But there it comes at a small cost, and that is that you can't like other people can't just do player dot arrow count minus minus. They are on the hook to say player dot consume arrow, which is it's a bit wordier. I do think it conveys the meaning pretty well. I don't think that's too bad. Um, one thing that it has done is the way this is set up, there is no way for us to, for example, and I don't know if you watched the video of the first one where I found a similar Hunt the Wumpus game online that has a similar feature where you can shoot arrows. Um, it's possible, like you could make it so that in the game you can find arrows, and if we did that, then like that we don't currently with having just a public setter, then other parts of the game could just say, oh, you found an arrow, add an arrow. In this case, we've eliminated that option. We have constrained it. Like right now, the only way that you're allowed to the only way you're allowed to modify that arrow count is by calling consume arrow. So we'd have to like add in a method that's like public void replenish arrows or something like that, and then have like a count of the number of arrows found, and do something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of pathways we could go down for that. We've kind of found ourselves here, and I think I'm okay with this. I like this design. So let's stop messing with that for now, and let's go to. So we need so we've got this move action here, and we need something similar for public class shoot action. So we just add another action type, and so it's kind of convenient in here that we've just already got this infrastructure in place. This one will actually have much of this same code because it needs a direction. And of course here we need to implement this execute method. So I messed something up. I'm missing a curly brace somewhere. All right. Where was I just messing with? It was the player class. No, I guess it's not that. It must be my new shoot command. Shoot action. Yeah, there it is. That's one of those. I'm gonna undo that for a second. That's one of those errors where, like, look at all the errors I got. I have 112 errors because of a single missing curly brace, and the place that it pointed that out was not even close to the place that had the issue. So, shoot action. All right. So now we can do game.player.consume arrow. You know what? As I'm thinking about this, so we could do something like if game.player dot arrow count is greater than 0. So something like this. So yeah, if we have any arrows, then consume an arrow. But I also wonder, like, what if we just came down here and made this be a bool method and just said and returned whether there's an arrow or not. So if arrow count is greater than 0, so let's do it this way. If arrow count is less than or equal to is 0, return false. There is no arrow. Otherwise, we subtract 1 and return true. Yes, we have an arrow and we've consumed it. So now we can come back over here and we can just say if game.player.consume arrow. So at this point now that has subtracted 1 from the arrow count. And so we know we've shot an arrow now. We've spent the arrow. We know we have one, and now we just need to handle its effects. So what we need to do here is say we just need to look through for int index equals game dot okay monsters dot length index equals 0. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Index is less than game dot monsters dot length index plus plus. So go down the list. The catch here, before we get too far, this the game itself doesn't expose the monsters, and it maybe needs to. So maybe we promote this to a public monster array monsters and do something like that. There is a slight problem with this in terms of protecting our data that we'll get to in a minute. Let's fix this a little bit here really quick. So actually, before we do that, let's figure out like what direction. Okay, I keep getting jealous of this code. I keep wishing I had this because right now I need that. Given the location of the player, I need to know what square, what that location is of where my target is, and and that's not the first time that we've come to this code and said, oh man, I wish I had that. So maybe we should take this code and move it. And I think a good place for it could be on this location class. So I'm gonna do that, and I could do this in a. So right now, it's always helpful to do very small minor changes rather than huge changes that require a lot of patching. So one thing we could do is we could just say, well, we'll make a very similar method over here in this location, and we'll just say public location get relative location. And just kind of basically we leave the other method as it was and just add in a new one. And in this case, we're you basing this off of our current, the location we're in's row and column. So I don't need any of these. And that should do it. That covers. Yeah, this is saying you could this covers all of the actual named enumeration values. This warning is saying there could be other options, and the one it gives is if you take a 4 and cast it to a direction, then that wouldn't work. And that's true, and we could do something to handle that, like if it's something else, then I don't know what we do. This is suggesting we throw an exception. That's actually what I would typically do. But we don't know about exceptions, and this isn't handling user input code, so it's not unreasonable to think that our bases should be covered if we programmed everything well enough. I'm not going to worry too much about that warning. It doesn't mean there aren't scenarios where you shouldn't worry about it. Speaking of not worrying about it, I think there's a way if we just come in here and say suppress. I actually don't want to turn it off for everything. There is a way, and I don't do this often enough to. I think it's warning disabled. And then we say the warning number. Oh. Getting way ahead of myself there. There's a way to specify just a single one. So this is yet another way we could do this. And this is covered. What we're doing here is covered way late in the book. CS8524. So here we can say, look, we know what we're doing. Don't worry about it in this case. I'm not going to do that either right now. But that's what that warning is saying is hey, you didn't cover a scenario. You didn't cover the scenario where it's something else. Like I said, in general, that there shouldn't be something else. We could do something like if it's anything else, we just don't do anything. I just worried that if suppose we made this 3-dimensional and we had an up and a down, it may not be obvious to us that because this code this will work. If we didn't handle up and down, we'll just not move up or down, and I don't know if that's really. It's easy to hide that bug on accident, so I'd almost rather not do that. Anyway, this is fine for what it is. So now that we have that method, we could come back to here, this place here, and just delete this. We shouldn't need that. What we do need though is to just change this to .get relative direction. So again, let me take one small step back. we were talking about making small changes. Usually the smaller you can make it and still have it compile and work, the better. So right now it compiles. Nobody's using that new method we just wrote, but everything is happy right now. And now I want to actually use that method, which means I don't. So if we're going to make really small baby steps, what we can do is say current dot get relative location. That. So now we are using it. Everything compiles once again, and now this says it's not used. So now we can just delete that. Everything compiles again. So all these little baby steps to ensure that everything stays working well. And now we can use, now we've kind of migrated that code out to that location class. And now right here, we can say game.player.location. And we can say get relative location with the direction that we're shooting in. And everything compiles once again. So so one thing we could do is we could say, so keep in mind that we don't like that we should narrow and it only goes into the next room. It doesn't just keep going down the line. So we only have to check just that one immediate square next to us. So we've got that location now, and now we just need to say, is there a monster that's alive that is at that location? So we can say if game.monsters at the index location equals the target. Now what? At this point, the monster should be dead. And so maybe what we could do here is we could say monster So we'll start that to null, say how we may not find one, but here we can say dead monster equals that. And then we don't actually, even if there's 7 monsters that are all in that location, we don't want to necessarily kill them all. So we could do that. And then now, so now we know what the monster, yeah. Okay. Now we're at a point where we've got to do something to take this monster out of play. And one possibility could be that we could remove it from the array. The problem is that arrays don't allow us to resize stuff. And that's, as we've done these challenges, that's become more and more painful, that we don't have arrays don't allow us to easily change remove an item from the array. There are tools that would do that. Array dot, let's see if there's a, yeah, I don't see anything directly in here, but we could use some of these array methods to do some stuff, like to make a new array, to remove one monster from the list and then copy the first, all the monsters before it to a new array and all the monsters after it to the array. We could do something like that. Really, the better tool, which we don't quite have, is we could use a list, which is a generic type, and we could if we had this. I'm not going to keep going with this because I'm going to use it. We haven't officially introduced this system.collections.generic list, though we have done generics. So you could build your own dynamic list class if you wanted, like that it can grow and shrink. But if we had this, then it would be really easy to just say gain.monsters.remove the dead monster. And now our monster list is just one shorter. I'm not going to do it that way though. Like I said, we haven't covered that yet. So I'm going to make sure we at least cover how we would maybe do this given the set of tools that we've actually covered. So and so I think like a way to do it is that we could just say so what we could do is we could just give all of our monsters like what we do with the player. We could have an is alive method, and we could even set it up in basically the same way. In fact, we could say like this is being alive, dead or alive, is something that this method here and these two properties, that's not just something that is unique to players. That's something that is applies to any character. And we could take all of this code and move it over here to this character class, and then anything could be killed. So I think I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to move this up here, and then I'm going to just let's come back to that in a second. So I'm going to just take all of, again, like small steps here. Everything compiles. So I'm just going to remove this and then come down over here to character, and I'm going to drop it in here. And now all of this logic for being able to be alive, cause a death, kill, it's all in there. We can come into here and say we died because of an arrow, which potentially allows a human to die by an arrow as well. And now in this case, now we can just say dead monster dot kill, cause of death, arrow. We're never going to display that, so it maybe doesn't matter the specifics there, but anyway, let's see. So this could be null. That's what that warning is, and we should check that. So if we didn't find any, then we shouldn't kill it. Anyway, so now we can actually kill these monsters. They stay in our collection of monsters. This array is going to hang on to them forever, whether they're dead or alive. And we could maybe use that to our advantage. The game says that it has no effect on the game, so we could have just entirely removed them if we wanted to. But in terms of sensing, so what we should do here, in terms of sensing Amaroks and sensing Maelstroms, what we should do is if it's an Amarok and monster.isAlive, so we just stick that in here, and there's a lot of other ways that we could deal with that, but same with here. So if it's a Maelstrom and if it is alive, yeah. So now we only do this we only do this check if it's alive. All right. So okay. So I think we've dealt with the fact that once they're dead, we'll no longer be able to sense them. We've got an action that we can shoot. However, the player class or the player input class, player input actually so there's this interact with player. We need to do something like this guy shouldn't be able to, even if we go into a room with a dead Amarok, this thing shouldn't kill the player. So we could do something like if is alive, if I'm alive, then kill the player. But I think we could, if we come over here, if monster, so if basically we only want it to interact with the player if it's alive. So right in here we could say, and monster dot is alive. So we know, we know this list is going to contain alive and dead monsters. We only want to call it interact with player if it's alive to interact with the player. Okay, let's see. So we need the player input class. And in here, we want to add in we have it, if we type in shoot, move, north, south, east, west, we want to use a shoot action instead. And that should probably do it. Let's run this and see. Make sure I got my map handy here. Let's do a small game. Move south, move south, move south, move east. So here we should be close to the maelstrom. And now we should say shoot east. And we should kill it. So it would be nice if it told us that we hit something, or if we missed something. That's the one thing that I think would be nice to have here. But we no longer hear the growling and growling of a maelstrom nearby. So move east. So now we're in that same room as the maelstrom. Move north, move north, move, shoot east. And so we've moved up here and then shot into here. Move north, enable fountain, move west, move west. All right, so now we can shoot them. Like I said, the one thing that we are missing is on that shoot command, shoot action. It would be nice if we did something like if we found a monster does not equal null, console.write line, you hit something. Console.foreground color is green or something like that. I don't know. Green. So somewhere I'm going to run out of arrows. That's right there, because now I'm not missing. And the other thing that I'm forgetting is that we should, right here, we'll put it after this. We should put console.write line. So yeah, we just display the number of arrows so we know how many we have. There's a catch to this, and that is that if I like, just because of the nature of English grammar, have if I have one arrow, it's going to be grammatically incorrect. We could do the old fashioned, you have that many arrows. We could write code to handle it, or we could just do my favorite trick, which is to just something like this. And now, like, it'll be grammatically correct regardless of if you have 0 or 1 or 500 arrows. Just tells you how many arrows you've got. One thing here, though, is so in this case, this method is quite long now, but so if we're able to get an arrow, then we do all of that. Otherwise, console dot let's use that same dark red for like an arrow failure. You don't have any arrows left. Yeah, so that seems like that's working. And it tells me how many arrows I have. I want to restart this and just see if okay, good. I just want to make sure that we do start with 5. Um, I actually think that does it for this challenge. Just double check really quick and just make sure. But so we've got several arrows the player can shoot. So add the following commands. We did add those commands, and when you shoot, an arrow is fired into the room in that direction. If a monster is in that room, it's killed, and it should not affect the game anymore. They can no longer sense it, and it should not affect the player. So I think we've accomplished all of that. The player only has 5 arrows and cannot shoot when they're out of arrows. We did handle that. Display the number of arrows. We handled that before asking for their action. Yeah, so I think we covered everything that we needed to do on that. And just wanted to throw in one minor thing here. There is, like I said, we talked for a while about the using a list or something where it's easy to just remove the dead monster. And we like the way we're doing this, because it is an array instead of say a list or something. We're going to have a collection of dead monsters. In a lot of cases, I would say that's bad, but the fact that there is a dead monster hanging around actually does. It actually that makes it so that we can do something like this in here, where we can say if something like where we can say I'm gonna make another one here. I'm gonna say like we can sense dead Amaroks in the same room. And then in this case, what we want to do is go through all of these and see if any of them, if they're so if they're not alive and they're in that same location, then we can say, and I'm gonna make this, I'm gonna kind of de-emphasize this by not coloring it. There's the corpse of a dead Amarok in this room. So now if we go, like I said, there could be an advantage to hanging on to these uh, the dead things if we want. That's not what I wanted. There we go. All right, so now the Amarok move. So we can smell it. We're right here. We know it's here. So I'm just going to shoot. You hit something, and now we can't smell it. However, if we say move east, there's the corpse of a dead Amarok in this room. So it's now, so we can sense. We can tell that it's in here. Yeah, but it doesn't hurt us. It doesn't affect us because it's dead. So we just because we could remove it doesn't mean we always should. It depends on what we want the game to be like. But that was not required as far as the official challenge describes. So that's a little bonus feature that we've got. Okay, and I think that's it for this challenge. So we'll wrap it up here, and I will see you guys next time.